Melissa's fly wants to go home too. All right.
For real. I'm like, why
the fly throughout the whole podcast, it went in the damn camera. It's sitting there trying to distract me. I'm like, get the damn fly out of here. It's so disrespectful. No, it was the fly.
There's a funny thing in the room with her.
No.
The fly like I closed the door. So like I closed the door.
But it crawled on the camera.
The whole time.
Yeah.
There's your funny thing right there. The damn fly.
What about you, Susanna? Generational wise, like the younger nurses versus the more seasoned.
Kind of look at the big picture with everything. The younger nurses went by the book. Sometimes you kind of have to bend things. I mean, I'm not saying, do things that are illegal as a nurse or whatever, or out of your scope of practice, but sometimes you have to look at a situation and like go outside of the box as opposed to just like, okay, well, by the book. I don't agree with nurses coming straight out of school and going straight to ICU. This is never going to change. You will always need your critical thinking skills to develop. You don't get that in nursing school. You don't. You need hands-on. You need situations to happen. You need guidance from other nurses. ICU is a place for nurses that have their critical thinking skills. You need to start at med surg level. That's what I feel, because that's where you can go at your own pace, learn how to prioritize like that nursing sixth sense about your patient. You just need to start there. I don't agree with like these accelerated programs either, where you become like, you go from like RN to NP with what experience? That's just me. But like I said, you can't go straight to ICU. You can't go straight to nurse practitioner. You can't go straight to, you need to get those critical thinking skills down.
I saw that in my profession when I was first out of school. The head athletic trainer, he wouldn't even touch the person and he would diagnose the person. And I'm doing like all the evaluation and all the skills or whatever. And then I'm like, I think it's this or this. And he was like, well, what happened? And did you do this test? And I'm like, yeah, I got this. And he's like, all right, it's this. And I'm like, how do you know that? And then they go to the doctor and come back and it was exactly what he said.
Wow.
And like, I'm at that level now where you could just tell me about it and I'll be like, oh, it's probably this. But it's because of the years and years of experience.
Right.
But for me, it's different because one, work with men, majority men. So you have that kind of where it's very different. As a woman, they talk to you differently. They treat you differently. If there's a confrontation between a man and a woman, it's very different from man to man.
Yep.
They'll blow up at each other and then go in their corner and the next day act like that never happened. Where, if they do it with me, if I raise my voice, I'm a bitch or I'm emotional or I'm all of a sudden I'm all these things, but you guys can talk like that. So I don't even engage in it. I just walk out. I'm like, all right, because it's always a dick measuring contest with them too, which I'm like, I'm not going to get involved with that either. But for my profession, it's changed, and COVID highlighted a lot of the issues with my profession. I am the only profession, I'm screaming this from the rooftop, the only profession that sees an injury from when it happens to the entire recovery process to the return to the field. The only one that we are there every single step of the way.
Yeah.
And we have to have the skills of anybody else that would just be in that part. So I'm there at the game as an EMS worker. I'm evaluating and saying, okay, which doctor do I need to refer you to? Because I have to have the assessment skills. I'm doing the rehabs. I'm doing the pre-rehab and the post-rehab. I'm doing all of that on top of forming a relationship, on top of creating an atmosphere where the athletes, this is their safe haven, where what's said in the training room stays in the training room, where we get the tea and it seems laid back, but there's a lot going on underneath the surface. It's a fun job, but it's also very stressful. And whenever I've had to get on my soapbox many times at meetings to explain to people what we do, because they're like, oh, what do? You just tape ankles and just put boo-boos on Band-Aids. And I'm like, what? So I'm like, my skill range is so wide. And I'm like, I do so much. Just because I don't complain, I don't get recognized. And then even they do salary surveys and stuff like that. And they'll say a woman will be anywhere from $11 to $15 paid less just because we're a female. And when I bring it up in meetings where I'm like, when am I going to get a raise? I have all these, you keep adding, you're a good worker, they add more work.
Yep.
But you're not compensating. So I would always be fighting for that. And I would get, you think you're a doctor? And I'd be in a meeting where an administrator would be like, well, you can't get paid more than an administrator. I'm like, why can't I get paid more than an administrator? Exactly. I can do their job. They can't do mine. I'm licensed and certified. What are you? I can do your job. I'm like, I have a liability. I can lose my license and lose my livelihood. And so I would have these arguments all the time. And COVID highlighted it a lot because what happened with COVID was we were never seen as healthcare professionals. And again, it's language because we're called trainers. Nobody understands what we do, or they don't have any clue what we do. And so I would have to, again, get on my soapbox many times and explain to all the head coaches, like, you don't understand what I do behind the scenes to keep your athletes playable, to keep your athletes even keeled, to keep your athletes safe, to keep your athletes healthy, mentally, physically, all of that.
Yep.
There's a lot that goes on and you have to appreciate it. So my coaches, it's building that rapport where they trust me. And I remember saying, when am I going to get a raise? And I felt like, and I've said it because I'll call them out. I'm like, if I was a man, you'd find a reason, but because I'm a woman, you find an excuse.
That's a fact.
And it would piss me off. And, so it's always that. And then, you have the boys club where they kind of, look out for each other or cover for each other and things like that. Thankfully, I don't have to be involved with that because mine is kind of a separate entity. So I kind of have created my own world there. But
it still affects you though, right? Because they have that relationship. Yeah.
Well, what happens is now the profession's changed so much. So for the younger generation that's coming in, we're masters now. So the profession decided we're going to do away with all bachelor programs and you have to get a master's. No one's going to school for 6-7 years to come out getting 40 or 50 grand.
Hell no.
So these new people, these new kids were coming out. And I would talk to the other head trainers from other schools and they're like, I'm having a really hard time hiring people because these kids are coming out with their masters wanting 80 grand as a starting salary when they don't know anything. And they're like, I'm not even making that, and they're a head trainer. And I'm like, well, that's your problem. And so, and anytime I would go to the higher ups to ask, they know everything. And I would tell the other athletic trainers in the meetings, I'm like, they know what all of us are making. Because I would go, I'd say, I want a raise. I've been here so many years. And they say, Sam, but you're the highest paid in the conference. And I'm like, well, I should be. I've been here the longest. I should be paid, but I still should be paid more.
More, yes.
And I would come here's the salary surveys. This is, if I was a man, I'd be getting paid $10,000, $11,000, $12,000 more. You're not paying me what I'm worth. And there was always an excuse or always a reason that, the school that doesn't have money. It doesn't have, and there's always, but then they would find raises for other departments or other things. And I'm like, you're full of shit.
Why is that still a thing? Why is there a female male discrepancy? Why?
Well, that's part of the reason why they had those laws recently. I don't know if they've rolled them back, where you have salary transparency now. Because what happens is that, like Samantha says, there's these little biases that happen, or I'll look out for my boy because he's my boy and stuff like that. They'll naturally screw you over because they don't think that you're going to know and they don't think you're going to leave. So that's why we have those laws now in New York about salaries. So you can see that and have that data and present it to them. Not that it matters. It doesn't necessarily mean they'll still make them an excuse as to why I can't pay you that, even though I know what I should be getting paid and what other people around me are getting paid. They'll still find a reason, but that's exactly right. But it's bullshit. It's literally bullshit. No real reason. It shouldn't happen. That's the answer.
I mean, it's 2025. I'm saying you can't tell anyone your salary.
Yeah, I remember that.
Anyone know.
I'm like, you trying to hide this so we can't sit there and advocate for ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah. When I first started this job, I remember asking for a certain amount of money. And they're like, well, we can't really do that because then you'll be making more than other people. I don't know who they were talking about. I'm like, in my head, I don't give a fuck what they make.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't care.
Notice they said it to Sam, me, and you. They said that to me too. They're like, whatever. They wanted to keep me part-time. I was working per diem at an old job, whatever. And then they're like, I'm like, I don't know. What do people, and I remember thinking, oh, I don't want to ask for too much, but let me just Google what people are making, whatever. So I gave her a number, and at first she thought it was okay, but then she came back and she goes, then, you would be making more than so-and-so. And I'm like, what's your point? So-and-so gets benefits. It was for the county. So they get these ridiculous benefits, which shouldn't even matter. But let's just say that hourly, I get no benefits. I'm working part-time, and of course, I can only work X amount of hours, because anything more than that, then I have to get benefits. So I was like, the same thing as you guys, like, well, you'd probably be making more than so-and-so. And I'm like, but you guys are making, if you do the math, you'd be making way more than me, because you're getting these insane benefits, which are county benefits, which is state benefits, which is obviously very different, and if you're going to do the math, I'd be getting a lot less. Puts you in a position of having to prove, having to defend, having to, and I'm just like,
and then you feel kind of weird and guilty, right? Like you kind of feel weird. They make you feel like, why are you asking for more? Like
Well, I remember when I first came into my first full-time job, and I'm working for a Division I school, and we were so underpaid. I mean, like, embarrassing what we were paid. And even the head trainer had been there a long time, like a couple of decades. He even wanted a raise, but he didn't know how to speak for himself or advocate for himself. So me and the other assistant were doing all the research. What's the cost of living? What's the salary surveys for our friends? We're giving him all the information. We're like, okay, you go to the higher ups. Here's the information. Get us all raises. And their answer was, we want it to remain a revolving door. We want to keep the salary low, and we want to keep it a revolving door. So just keep hiring new people so we can pay them low.
Wow.
Again, uneducated about what we do and what we provide for the experience for these athletes and the skill set that they have. These are the higher ups that have no idea what we do. And I remember the other assistant wound up quitting, and he was having a hard time hiring somebody for that salary because it was low. And I kept saying, I could get paid more. Like, I'm looking at other jobs, and I'm getting paid a lot more, but I like working here.
Yeah.
And so he hires this guy over the summer, and now we got the pay raise that we were asking for, but I'd already been working there 3 years. So the pay raise, you were taking away my merit pay. So now here's this new guy who has the same amount of experience and education I have. He comes in and he's making the same as me. And I kept saying, no, he shouldn't be making the same as me. I'm here 3 years. Don't take my merit pay away. It should be whatever the raise is, because overall you're raising that plus my merit pay.
Yes.
They said no. So then I was also supposed to get a bonus, and I didn't. He slashed that in half. So again, now I'm like, I'm going to start looking for other jobs, like, screw this place. And one day my boss calls me and he goes, I have something with my kids. Can you come in? It was my only day off that week. So I had to cancel what I had to do and go into work, because I would be the only one working. And I was pissed, like mad. And the idiot he just hired left his paycheck out.
Girl, I know what's coming.
And I saw his paycheck, and he was getting paid more than me. Like $3,000, not a lot, like $3,000. But back then, it's my first job, so $3,000 was a lot. And I go home and I start doing the math. I'm like, I've been working there 3 years. This is he's getting this. I'm doing the math. I have it all written out. I text my boss, and I'm like, because I knew he was working early in the morning to cover a practice and that nobody would be there. And I didn't sleep the whole night. I was tossing and turning all night like that. I was just infuriated. And so I text him in the morning, and I said, are you okay with me coming in? I need to talk to you about somebody. I need to talk to you about something. So he's like, oh, why is she coming in at 6:30 in the morning before the office opens, So I went in, and it was just me and him. And I said, listen, I know so-and-so's getting paid more than me. And I told him the truth. I said, I know he's getting paid more than me. You promised me this amount of money. I'm not getting that. I'm not happy about the raise. I don't think it's fair. We shouldn't be getting paid more. I mean, we shouldn't be getting paid the same. He doesn't have any more qualifications than I do. And so he starts giving a song and dance. Oh, HR must have made a mistake. Oh, HR. Even though I knew, because I was in the office, I started to look through stuff, and I was like, okay. And I knew he had signed off on it. And so I said, I would have really appreciated, and I was calm. I said, I would really appreciate if you didn't lie to me. And I said, I really like you as my boss, and I'm not trying to burn bridges here. And he kept dancing around it and he kept denying it. So then I said, listen, I'm supposed to come in at 12 o'clock today. If this is not fixed by 12 o'clock today, I'm not coming in. You're getting my immediate resignation with no warning.
Damn, Sammy.
And I said, I still live at home. I don't pay rent.
That's true.
I have
Yeah.
children.
That's
I'll
a
be
fact.
fine and I will find another job.
You will be fucked. Yeah, hold that. Yeah.
And know that if you bring this to HR, this is discrimination. You're paying him more because he's a man and I have the proof. And he was like, oh, okay. You know, so then he wound up calling me and he goes, I talked to HR and they're going to fix it and they're going to give you the money. You just have to come in later for a meeting with the director and blah, 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 blah. I wound up going to HR before going into the office to meet with the HR director to make sure we were on the same page before I stepped in, but they wound up fixing it. Still not to my level. Because the director was like, I'm only going to do it if you don't leave. I'm only going to do it if you don't leave. You have to work the year. Like, sure. But I left. And I said, HR doesn't say, oh, did I pay this person more? Oh my gosh. Here, let me pay you more. They take the money back.
Yeah.
If HR made the mistake, they would take the money back. They don't go, oh my God, so we have to pay everybody else more. They don't do that.
Yeah, that's
They
bullshit.
take it back. If they made a mistake, they take the money back. I know that.
Right.
Yes.
And he's like, no. That's why he kept denying it. And I was like, all right, you're burning a bridge. But there's also that kind of same thing, like even now with my current job, there's this false narrative where they're like, well, you know, Sam, we work in athletics. We're not here for the money. I am.
I got bills to
I
pay.
have a mortgage and kids.
Yeah,
like
I got kids.
am. I should be paid what I'm worth. And you're devaluing me. Or the other thing, because they've all been there for many years, they're like, well, the grass isn't greener. And I always say, I'm the grass. Wherever I work gets better. Of course, it's going to be the same bullshit. But just like I make your life lovely, I will make theirs lovely.
That's right.
But they always have an excuse and I always have an answer. But it still doesn't make a difference.
This is basically what I've seen. So, yeah, that makes sense.
But
None of
imagine
this
the
is
people
actually
that don't have the cojones like you do to go up there and demand what you're worth. You know what I mean? How much they get away with all that stuff.
They get away with it a lot.
All the time.
And they lose good people.
Which they're fine doing, right? Like what you said.
Yeah.
Like that's the first time I've ever heard anyone vocalize that. But that's what happens in those back rooms where they're like, look, we know we're going to lose this person.
And they don't give a shit.
They don't give a shit. Like, yeah. That happened to me in the last company I left where I was laid off. They kept the guy that I actually trained up and me and him kept in communication because I didn't want him failing. Eventually he pieced out too. And I'm like, all right, let's see what happens now. Let's see if they figure it out. But they find a way. They'll sit there and pass the work. They actually pass the work to someone else that worked in a different department. They're just willing to do it. Right. Yeah. So
I think the biggest mistake I made in my career is that I didn't change jobs. Like you should every few years do your resume and
that's
see
why
what's
those
out
young
there,
bucks.
And no one ever told us that.
Yes, we weren't taught that. No,
we work for so I've been at my job for over 20 years, and it's like, oh, you work and you grow, which I did. I grew with them, and I got to do opportunities that I would have not gotten other places. But I should have seen what's out there just to be like, oh, I can get paid more doing the same job. Like I know younger generations where they're like, no, I will go somewhere else and get more money and give myself the pay raise that they won't give me.
I'm telling you, it's so true. It's so true. Every time I've made more money is when I got laid off or I left the company. And it's significantly higher. Where you sit there and you kick yourself. I'm like, why did I stay? And I think, like you said, part of it is that because we were raised a certain way, you're also very comfortable with the environment. Like, I don't know how many jobs I stayed at because I like the people I work with, right? I kind of knew what I needed to know. It didn't really cause me tons of stress and stuff like that, but I was literally leaving money on the table. So I think, some of the good things we've learned from our, older generation has also been a detriment to us in some respects, right? And this is where those, the young whippersnappers, I'm like, yo, I'm not mad at you. I'm like, and I learned from them. I'm like, you're absolutely right. I'll sit there, ping LinkedIn, see what's out there and stuff like that. You should always be looking to see what's available for you because there is, right? Like there's not this, we're not part of the generation where if you sit there, you work hard, you get the gold watch, you're going to get good retirement.
Right.
You don't even have good retirement anymore, right? Like they had retirement. I was like, now we get like 401k plans that, they they chip in the bare minimum. So I'm like, to have that type of loyalty for a company is actually detrimental to your growth, right? It's not really a smart thing to do. So that's why I tip my hat off to those young people when I'm like, and I learned a lot from them, because I remember people that work with me, they left, they're like, Eddie, I made $20,000-$30,000 more. You should come over here. And I'm like, nah, I'm good and stuff like that. Still had that mentality, right? And I'm like, meanwhile, these people are sitting there younger than me, making more money than me, and that's the way they should move. So hats off to you young folks that think like that. But again, find a balance. You can't just sit there and keep leaving a company because you had a rough day and stuff like that, right? Find a balance.
Well, yeah, because then you have a reputation of where's the integrity?
Exactly.
Like, what's your character like? Why can't you see something through?
Like,
there are growing pains that you experience being there with longevity.
Yes.
And seeing how a company changes over time. Like I've seen how much my job has grown and the changes or whatever. And even now, like what I fight for is not just me. I fight for everybody. I'm like, I'm not just asking for a raise for me. Everybody in the office deserves a raise. We've grown so much and we've all been here. Like, it's not fair. We need more staff. We need more money. We need more recognition. And there's always an excuse. And again, the higher ups, they only care about their budget lines. That's all they see in their meetings is numbers and figures. They don't know what I do. The first time when I first got promoted, we have to do self-evaluations, which I think is so stupid.
Me too.
So we have to do these self-evaluations. Of course I'm great. So the first year, and like my boss and the previous head athletic trainer, they wouldn't take him seriously. So they would just write whatever bullshit. They were like, nobody reads it and it never doesn't make any difference. So why? So the first time, like, I'm in this position and I changed everything because number one, I knew I was a woman. And number two, if I didn't gain the respect and I didn't gain it right away, it was going to be hard for me to get it later. So I've changed everything. And in meetings, I'm like, this is how we're doing things now. This is what we're doing. And I modernized everything. I took it off of paper into computer. So I was ahead of my whole department. And so here I am, I changed everything. And then when it came to self-evaluation, it was 3 pages type, right? Single space, not even double space. And my boss was like, what the fuck is this? And I'm like, it's everything I did this past year.
Yeah.
Like a month later, my boss calls me in his office and he's like, what did you write in your evaluation? Goes to show you he didn't even read it. And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, the VPs are all fighting. And I said, what do you mean? And he's like, they didn't know that you did all of that.
Yeah, I know.
Why?
Because nobody before me advocated for themselves. Nobody educated the higher ups what my position does. And he goes, they're saying you should be making more. No fucking shit.
My God.
No fucking shit. So after the first year, I wound up making more than the previous head trainer.
There you go.
Because I got the raise from being promoted, and then I got a raise again after my first year, just for advocating for my profession.
Yes, exactly.
There you go.
That's the way it should work. It doesn't, but that's the way it should work.
How about
I've been screwed ever since.
those self-evaluations? Did you have to do like the numbers 1 to 5 or whatever? Any of you?
Depends on the evaluation. Yeah.
No, ours was like paragraphs. It was like
No,
5 questions, and you had to like write a paragraph.
Oh, well, ours was like on a number, and then you'd have to, if you gave yourself like a 4 or 5, which is the highest, then you'd have to write in the why.
Why?
Yeah.
Right. But
they just switched that.
Yeah. But the caveat was like nobody can have a 5 because nobody's a 5.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Which is, why do you have it then? And why can't anyone be a 5? Because they don't want to pay you, because the bonus that you get or the raise that you get goes with that number.
They say it's to strive for it. And I'm like, you're full of shit. No, you're never going to give anybody a 5. That's just what you do. So, so I worked in the MRI department for a prestigious hospital, and Hurricane Sandy wiped out all the MRIs in the basement. So I helped transition that MRI department from the basement to in the courtyard, the temporary MRI. It was a whole thing. Helped ramp up the anesthesia. When we moved to the second floor, I helped open that one. And they did recognize me, but my nurse manager was leaving and she said, I don't give a fuck. I gave you a 5 because I deserved it. The thing is, you're not allowed to as a manager give your 5.
There are moments that, like for me, I've had breaking points. Like COVID was a huge breaking point because my job is always already to the 10th power, and COVID brought it to like You know, and now it's like, oh, well, you're a healthcare professional, so you can do the COVID test. Oh, so you see me as a healthcare even more work? Okay. And I remember they pissed me off. It was like April, so there's like a month left of school, and something happened because everybody can say no, but I can't. And I said, I can't do this. And I got backlash. And so I came back. I don't even remember what it was, but I was so livid that I came home and I had a long conversation with my husband. And I said, I'm about to quit, but I'm not going to quit in anger. I was like, I'm going to give myself a week. And if I still feel like this in 7 days, know that you got to go back to work full time because he's retired. I'm like, you need to go back to work full time and I'm going to have to find another job. But we're in the middle of COVID. So everything was like, you know, a mess. And I said, and so the next day I came into work and I told my assistant, I said, this is what's happening. Like, I'm pissed. Like, I'm done. They're going to lose me. And my boss comes in like he always does. And he's joking around or whatever, because here I'm stressed out, but he doesn't have to do anything different. And I said to him, I said, listen, I said, I was like, today's not the day. I said, I'm about to quit. And he's like, oh, where are you going? Where are you going? Oh, you've bought in, you live around the corner now. Like you're stuck here like me. And my assistant turns around and he goes, please stop talking to her because she's really serious. Can you please leave me alone? Leave her alone because I don't want to be here by myself. It's hysterical. But I was like, I'm not going to make the decision in anger. I'm going to wait. But they almost lost me there.
Why don't you go to the Yankees and then take me to all of the games?
Because then I'd never see my family.
Dang it.
Definitely wouldn't.
That's the price you pay. You might get paid more, but you have to travel. You have to.
But what a dream job. What a dream job.
And you would never see your family. You would miss out on everything.
Balance. Everything's balanced. You need to find a balance.
Yep. Yeah. That's another level.
Yeah. Pretty heavy level.
And it's pressure too. I mean, I get pressure now. You know, it's like you can't play somebody. Oh my God.
Right. Right. Yeah, they're having that issue now this year, you know, with all the injuries that happened in spring training.
Yeah, because it's my fault. It's my fault. You know, and they try to challenge you. I've had coaches do that too. They're like, well, you know, the hospital said that it wasn't a concussion. It was just a headache. You know, what authority do you have over an ER doctor? And I'm like, I've always had authority over an ER doctor. I am their healthcare professional. I don't know who that ER doctor is. They could have graduated last in their class. Maybe they don't understand what a concussion is, but I do because this is my job. And I'm like, so you will go to the team doctor and the team doctor has say over any doctor and the team doctor is going to be on my side because I know how to do my job.
That's right. Correct.
I was like, that ER doctor saw them for 5 minutes. They just wanted them to go because it wasn't an emergency. And I said, no reason. And some injuries too, I negotiate. I'm like, listen, if it's just an ankle sprain or whatever, I'm like, listen, what's the more important game? I need them to be off for a week. You want them to play? I will strap them up and let them play this game, but then you got to give them a week off. You know, it depends on what it is. I'll negotiate. But if I think it's going to cause more harm, then they're out.
Can you take me out of work, Sam? I got a headache. Write me
well,
notes.
That's another question I have. Like, do you like, and I know that this is the older generation, like my father, my mother, like my mother, her whole life, she would be like, I'm a banker. And she would always hang on to her identity.
From a work.
What their job was, like that was all they were. And I'm like, I don't even tell people what I do because the minute I tell people what I do, they're like,
for me, I know there was a period, this was like another self-growth thing. I know like when I was running my business and I really sat there and my whole identity was my business, right? And this is where God is very, very good and humbling. So I was out here, I'm balling, doing really well. I'm being real sexist too at home. I'm like, Marcellus, you sit there, you take care of everything. I'm bringing home all the money. We're doing really well and stuff like that. I started feeling myself and stuff, right?
You're a man.
And, yeah, I'm a man. Yay! I'm a boss, right? I'm doing well, making a ridiculous amount of money that that surpass any of my parents' dreams. And then when we first bought our house, right, the week that we moved in, and this was because it was an internet business, my business was cut in half. So I sat there and I had prepared for like the worst. I'm like, all right, well, you know what? I put down a lot of money on the house and I always had anticipation. I'm like, if the business goes down even half, I should be good. The half was just the start. It just got totally wiped out. I was just like, I was freaking out. I'm like, we got this house, we have my daughter. How the hell am I going to afford this? Right. Like I just sat there. I just remember walking around and just like being like even almost suicidal, where I'm like, holy shit, like I don't know what I'm going to do. I have a whole family to support. And it took a while, right? Like just these conversations with God where I was sitting there and I'm like, and I realized that you're more than just this business person that you were just so focused on, right? Like you're a dad, right? You're a father. You're a brother, you're a friend. You weren't your business, right? The money that you make wasn't you. Like it was like a reawakening because, you know, I had to be humbled, right? I had to go back to work. There were certain things I just couldn't do. And I just learned to be me again, right? And it was one of those things where I sat there and I told God, I'm like, you know what? I needed to go through that because I was really feeling myself. My whole identity was the fact that like, I created this successful business. I achieved all these goals that I set for myself and I thought I was the shit. And it was just like wiped away like that. Yeah, exactly. And again, like, you know how they say, like, don't make permanent decisions based on temporary situations. That was another key thing because I was like, my thoughts were crazy at that point because I was just like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm not going to be able to do anything with my family. I'm not going to be able to support them. But then, years later, whatever, figured it out, was broke. Because the other thing I had to remind myself, I'm like, I grew up broke. I'm like, this is nothing to me. I'm like, it was more my ego that was getting bruised by this, knowing that like I wasn't in that position because everyone knew where I was at that point. And now to sit there and kind of be humbled and be like, you're not really that successful businessman that you were promoting before. Now you're just like regular degular Eddie. And I'm like, regular degular Eddie is who I really am, not this other bullshit that I was sitting there and putting so much focus on. So when you say about like, your identity being like what you do, like that was something I had to, and that was a great lesson that I learned because it really helped me focus on the things that were more important about who I was and what I was to my family. But it was something that I'm like, I'll never ever do that again. I'll never sit there and basically wear my identity based on my career. Because you could see that even with especially with men, right? Men sit there. Like I remember when I first moved up here, and again, because I'm one of the few Black families here, the first question men ask you, right? Because it's a way to determine how much they should respect you or not. They're like, hey, so what do you do? And I'm like, I'm in marketing. No one understands what the hell I do, right? So I always just say like, I'm the person that helps your website show up in Google. They're like, oh, so you work for Google? I'm like, not really, but fine, whatever, if that's what you want to remember. But I realized they sit there, especially if you're a person of color living in, in their neighborhoods. And some of them came and saw my house. So then they start thinking, I remember there was a time where people thought, they're like, what did you say you do again? Which is because I remember there was neighbors that used to think like that maybe I was a drug dealer because I used to work at home and all types of that's literally where people used to think that. And I'm like, no, I run my own business and I work in corporate America. I sit there and do that stuff. But they're just sitting there and trying to judge you based on that, on what you do, right? Because based on that, that's how they're going to treat you. So if you're, if they perceive you as being really successful, you're going to be treated very differently. If they just perceive you as, being the drug dealer or something else, you're treated totally different. So that perception in terms of like what your career is really does have an impact either on yourself or how other people perceive you, which is annoying.
Mm-hmm. I think another false narrative was, like, for example, my husband worked for sanitation, right? He worked for the city for years. And he would always say it's the best kept secret. Like he didn't, he would say, I work for sanitation. And so people didn't respect him because he was a garbage man.
Right.
He was fucking making six figures. He was making more than me.
Mm-hmm.
Hell yeah. A full pension.
Yes.
Hell yeah. He only has to work 20 years. Exactly. And he was just like, I'm like, what the fuck did I go to college for?
Exactly.
Like my brother, like he doesn't have a master's degree or whatever.
Exactly.
He's making way more money than me because he went up the ranks and got the skill set on the job. And so there's this difference between jobs and careers, and it's just false narratives. False narratives. Even now, like that's changing too at college. Like this younger generation is realizing they don't have to go to college.
Right. Yes. Yes.
They can go to a tech school. They can go and become a plumber, an electrician, a trade school, making six figures.
HVAC is
money.
Why would I go and become this and start out with 80,000? Like I can start out making less. Like my husband, he's like, I made less, but then eventually in the long run, I made more.
Right. Yeah. I think part of that is also like our rate, like again, the background of being immigrants, right? I think with all of us, it was their dream. And there was also a different time too. There's a couple of things there. It was their dream that they came to this country, they worked hard, they busted their ass, and they were told, if your kid goes to college, they're going to be successful and they're going to be, and they're also, I think for most of us, I was the first college educated person in my family, right? So that was a big thing that, they wanted to be proud of, right? Like, I know, especially for me, like I failed my parents in that I didn't turn out to be a nurse, a doctor, lawyer, any of that stuff that like Caribbean folks want you to be because they can go and brag to the family that they have that. So part of that is that, right? Like I was never told about like trades, right? Like I didn't know that there was these trades where you could make the same amount of money that I'm making in corporate America, stuff like that. And even when I moved up here, a lot of the people that work here or like I live around that I have to sit there, going back to your point, Melissa, where I have to work 10 times harder. A lot of these guys are trade guys that I'm like, yo, and we're living in the same area, right? Like I had to do all this extra shit and they did some different paths that I didn't even know what was a path for me. So I agree with you. I think part of it was our parents wanted us to get the college education because back in the days, it really did make a difference. Now, not so much. Maselli's, I know you hate me saying that, but it's totally different. And also because of that sense of pride, like I'm an immigrant that came to this country. I busted my ass, my family, and I raised my kids. Now they're college graduates and they're these, white collar professionals, right? Like that was the dream. So I think that's the reason why we did a lot of these things. Like I didn't know that there was these other paths that existed. And even if I did, I don't think my parents would be very happy if I would have taken those paths, right? Even though I'm like, the money would have been the same thing. I would have still made the same amount of money if I would have found those other paths. So I think that plays into it.
You probably would have followed more of your passion. Like that's where me, like,
yes,
nursing was the thing. And I'm like, okay, it's stable, makes great money in New York. And I did it and I hated it. I hated it. I hated it. I mean, I was a very good nurse, but it wasn't my passion. Like I'm more creative and I would prefer to have done like entertainment or, something behind the scenes, in the scenes. I don't know. I would have liked something completely different.
I was teaching, I taught intro to health sciences and I would make the students interview somebody about their career and what, how they got to their career, why did they go to school or not go to school. And you'd be surprised how many people interviewed like their dad or an uncle and they were in construction or whatever and hated their job. And they're like, but I have a family to support. And you could just see the tone of their voice and whatever, like, well, I have a family and I'm doing this job because I have to pay the bills, but they didn't enjoy it every day. Like I'm the opposite. Like I loved going to work. And for me, like at work, I'm like main character energy all day. And so like, I'm like totally in my element, but I could be totally doing something else that would reflect that same energy. And I just feel like it didn't matter what I did, whatever I do, I'm going to do it well. That's just my personality. But I would have probably done better or enjoyed myself even more if I was passionate about it.
Right. That's where I sit. Exactly.
I feel like I have the personality that I need to love my job. I can't just work to work. I have to love what I do. And it would depress me if I was in an unhappy situation. And I hate that my job requires I have to get a master's, but that's the way it is. I don't want to go install air conditioners. I just don't. I mean, I don't want to do a physical job. I don't want to go a physical job. I don't want to. I don't want to work for a county and be miserable. I just don't, because I've been in those situations where they're like, we could pay. My old job is like, you'll get county benefits. I'm like, hate it here. Work itself, which is why I got out of the systems. The systems suck. All of them. The schools, the hospitals, all these systems suck for social workers. We're treated like shit. Let's put it. We're treated like garbage.
That's a fact.
But I found my way, and I still all that time loved it. What I didn't love was certain coworkers and bosses and systems and places. And so I'm like, if you're gonna make me get a master's, damn, pay me from the jump, from the beginning. You know what I mean?
Right. Spend money to get it.
Like just pay me properly, And now I've created, you guys know what I do. I do weird shit. I don't even do regular social work. I fucking do retreats with like altars and astrology.
Yeah, but you enjoy that.
And it's good stuff.
That's my point. I've evolved into this weird bruja therapist, and that's okay. But I mean, like that, I'm so sensitive. Like I can't be unhappy. But yeah, there are other avenues.
But we were never told that our passion would pay us.
Right.
Yes, you're right.
My mother, I remember my kids
to be a musician or an artist. Yeah.
Right. I remember my kids, I put them in dance school and my mother turned to me and said, don't let them enjoy it too much.
Ooh. That sounds like the old school way. Yeah, that's a fact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't let them enjoy that too much because you're gonna raise dreamers.
Yes,
My mother
that's
would say.
not a
I'm a
bad
straight up
thing.
dreamer.
I
am
want them to dream.
100% a dreamer.
I agree with you. Like, I know I did. So I'll tell you a funny story. When I started doing the whole internet thing, right? Because again, we all talked about, I was going to school for physical therapy. So my parents were super happy, right? Because my whole family worked in a hospital. They had, a medical background. My first job was in a hospital. So that was the path, right? We're all going to end up working at Montefiore Medical Center, right? Because that's what they did and stuff like that. That was the path I was going to follow. Then this little whole internet thing, which I blame them for, right? Like, Samantha, you heard this in my speech about my mom. They bought me my first computer. So my love for technology and what eventually became internet and marketing was because they bought me my first computer. So when I finally got into this path and I told them, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to be doing this physical therapy thing. I'm going to do this internet thing. And my mom was just like, internet? What is this internet nonsense you're talking about? I'm like, trust me, it's the wave. Everything you know is going to be on the internet, right? It's going to happen. She's like, this is ridiculous. Like, go become a doctor, nurse, whatever. All the shit that, like I said, the Caribbean people want you to do. And then when I finally, got my career and my businesses and stuff like that, doing it, my mom was just like, oh, I always knew that was the thing for you. You were going to do. I'm like,
Mama.
No, you didn't. You were upset that I was following this. I didn't fit the whole mold that you had for me. I'm like, but I was very blessed to, kind of like Melissa said, I followed what I loved. I loved being on the computer. I loved the technology. I loved the marketing. So I ended up doing something that I love rather than following the path of just being in the medical field like my whole family was. But, that's something that you got to kind of teach your kids too. Because it's hard, because at the same time, right, you want your kids to follow their path and their passions. But I'm like, but you got to pay your bills too, right? Like you got to figure out how you're going to make money. So again, balance. Everything.
Can I throw in an astrology reference, Eddie?
Yeah, girl.
Eddie is an Aquarius rising. Aquariuses see the future. No, I'm serious. Like, Aquariuses are weird in a good way. Like, they're like, think outside the box. They're like, y'all thought I was weird for working at home before COVID, but you already had that. You're ahead of your time. Just throwing that out there.
Melissa, no, you were absolutely right. No, you're absolutely right. Because people thought I was really straight. Like, I remember John used to say that. Like, people, they're like, yo, why isn't Eddie out? And they're like, yo, is he in his basement again? And I'm like, yes. So again,
mind you, your field now is oversaturated because Daniel is minoring in computer science and majoring in business, and now or whatever, tech thing.
Right.
Like, now everybody, a lot of people are doing it. Are you kidding me? It's so funny that you say that story, because to us it's like, oh yeah, that's marketing, business, all that, like computers, tech. But back then, it just shows how different it was back then.
Aquarius rising too. That's why I'm looking at my phone, because you
told
me that.
You're another weirdo. There you go.
Yeah, exactly. I know, because I know that
you
I can
think
tell
outside the box. You see the future. You have it's creativity, but it's also sciencey. Like, you're able to see something innovative that no one's really, not necessarily invented. Like, it's not always that extreme, but it's about creativity and vision.
It's funny you say that, because Maselli's used to say that about me, right? Because I was just like, I don't view myself as being creative, and she was just like, Eddie, for you to be the marketer and creating websites, and you be able, because that's her whole thing. She was like, you're able to see a vision as to what you want to do and how you want to achieve it. She's like, that's a level of creativity, and I never viewed it like that. But that's actually very.
It's not all like art.
Right. That's like, exactly, Susanna. That's what I used to think.
Yeah, I used to do the same thing. You ask them. Like, I used to always say that I'm not creative because I hated scrapbooking.
Right.
Like, bridesmaid shit and like, oh, we got a scrapbook. Like, I wasn't into that.
Right.
But look at what I do for a living.
Yes.
Right. It's all creativity. It's all putting things together. Yep. It's all vision. It's all out of the box. It's all being said. That's not a therapist. It's all, I made it my own. So, and people love it. So I just feel like creativity is just in so many different forms.
Exactly. And I didn't understand that. I just thought it was, like you said, just being able to scrapbooking and drawings. I'm not creative at all.
That's not only creativity.
Yeah.
Right. Ooh, you don't want to miss next week's episode, All Things Sex. We want to know your biggest questions, curiosities, secrets, or even misconceptions about sex. Don't worry, you will remain anonymous, but be ready for our candid, unfiltered, informative, and maybe even surprising answer. Subscribe to our channel, youtube.com/@LatinaLoud, and drop us an email at 3 loudlatinas with an S @gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you.